And welcome everybody to another episode of Fins Nation. I am your host, Louis Sung, and I am joined by the head of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, Ethan Skolnick, to discuss basically what happened yesterday against the Buffalo Bills as you are listening to this. The Miami Dolphins defense is a concern of mine, and I know that I was on the post-game show. Ron Caniff, Eric Weideke, they were on there telling me not to worry about it. It's not something to be concerned about. Acknowledge that the Buffalo Bills are a really good team, and that's just the end of it. But I'm noticing some very distinct patterns, and it has me concerned. I'm going to talk about it. Ethan's going to talk about it. But before we get into that really quick, just want to go ahead and mention that, as always, this show is brought to you by our good friends over at PrizePicks.com. PrizePicks.com is a revolutionary fantasy platform where you can now pick up to 6 different players across professional sports leagues. Whether that's the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, one of each, it's up to you to decide. Just choose whether your chosen player will get more or less than their projected stat. They give you free squares, special Taco Tuesday promos, Flex Friday specials where you can get your money back if you lose, or multiply the amount of money you can normally win. So with offers like that, it's hard to justify not signing up if you're any kind of a fantasy sports fan. So use the promo code 5, that's FIVE, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. Get the promo code 5, FIVE, go to prizepicks.com, deposit your $100, and let PrizePicks give you $100 of their dollars for you to play with and get started winning today. Okay, Ethan. So my biggest issue with this whole thing here has been just the simple fact that the Dolphins seem unable to stop anything on defense at all. Like, I'm looking at the stats from the game on.
That's pretty broad.
It's broad, but you know what? It's the truth. Josh Allen. Here's Josh Allen's stats: 21 of 25, 320 yards, 4 touchdowns passing. And 3 of them were to Stephon Diggs. 3 of them by themselves to Stephon Diggs, which poor Kader Kohu. We were so happy about his development, and then Stephon Diggs just took one day and wiped it all away and made him the second coming of Noah Igbenogany in one day. That's the I don't know what it's going to take, if anybody can really stop Stephon Diggs at this point, because there was actually a quote, and this is a very telling quote. Xavier Howard came out and said he wanted to be the one to shadow Stephon Diggs all game. And I guess Vic Fangio took it upon himself to say, no, it's not going to be you. We're going to put Kader Kohu on him. And the adjustment was never made. And this is where I get frustrated, because I see these things happening. I see all these bizarre decisions that are being made, whether there's personnel, whether it's the scheme, whether whatever you want to call it. The Dolphins are struggling to stop the run. They are struggling to stop the pass, and this whole concept of the bend don't break Vic Fangio defense that everybody has been so hyped about. Yeah, it works when you're playing a team that is known for making mistakes, because that was the whole premise on its face, right? Was that eventually you wouldn't allow the deep pass, you wouldn't allow yourself to get beat, you wouldn't allow yourself to give up the big play, and eventually the team on offense would make a mistake, the defense would be able to capitalize on it, and they would be able to get the ball back. The problem is that that's not happening. The other teams that we're facing seem to be going down the field at will, because we've already faced now 2 good offenses, legitimately good NFL offenses. We faced the Chargers, and they ran all over us. And the only reason we didn't lose that game was because Justin Herbert turns into a fly when it comes to the fourth quarter. He's worthless. And then, obviously, the Buffalo Bills, and Josh Allen literally had a perfect passer rating. He missed 4 passes all day. And that's not even counting the running game and all that stuff. So at this point, I'm looking at Vic Fangio and I'm saying, what are you doing? What's the matter with you? You are supposed to be the guy. You are supposed to be the godfather of NFL defense. And it looks like the Dolphins have one of the worst defenses in the NFL right now.
Well, I think I got overshadowed a little bit by scoring 70 points last week, and that's why I asked Mike McDaniel on Friday about where he thought his defense was, and he pointed out specific instances where they a turnover on downs and other things that they did to kind of put Miami back in position to score. But again, it wasn't going to matter against Denver because Miami moved the ball through Denver even easier than Buffalo moved the ball through Miami today. I think there's a couple things going on here just from the outside. Vic Fangio didn't forget how to coach, but I don't know if he has a great handle on this team yet. And I feel like that's kind of coming through a little bit. I think when you talk about Xavier Howard, who still considers himself to be a number 1 corner, we can argue about that one way or the other. The Dolphins went out to get a number 1 corner in Jalen Ramsey, and obviously he hasn't been healthy, and we're probably not going to see him for a few more weeks. But look, if you have a guy who has been your number one corner who wants to cover the best receiver on the other team, particularly when that team is so reliant on that particular receiver, you would think that that would happen. Now, Jalen Phillips didn't play today, but this has been a consistent problem whether he's played or not. They haven't gotten a lot of pass rush. And so there are really two things that are going on right now. Okay, I think one is up the middle, like Sealer got paid and Wilkins wants to get paid, but they're not making any plays. Okay, and they're getting pushed off the line of scrimmage. So that's first thing. And then the second thing is that they're not getting pass rush from the outside. And I guess the third thing is they don't really have playmaking linebackers, it doesn't appear. The one guy who's been making plays, regardless of what position he's been put in, is Van Ginkel, who's a guy who we kind of pushed to the side a little bit. But I'm not hearing Jerome Baker making a ton of plays. David Long has not really lived up to the expectation thus far. And so you're putting a lot on your safeties, particularly Javon Holland, to make plays. Again, they're a little bit thin in the secondary because of the injuries that they've been dealing with. Bethel's playing a lot of snaps. So there's some injury stuff, but this is also a coordinator who's supposed to be able to make the best with what he has. And it does feel like he doesn't really have a great handle on this group yet. Now, they may go into the offseason and it may be okay. Vic's got to get more of his players, and there may be trust put in him, but they're trying to win now. They've got two on the rookie contract now. They can't wait until the offseason. They're paying Bradley Chubb a lot of money. They're paying X a lot of money. They're going to be paying Jalen Ramsey a lot of money when he comes back. There were high expectations for this defense to be a top 10 defense this year, and there was a lot of blame put on the previous coordinator, who was too aggressive at times. Right now, this coordinator, as you said, supposed to be a little bit more bend but don't break, but they're just bending until the team's in the end zone. They go through complete drives without forcing a negative play. Like, that's the thing. Like, I mean, they're not putting other teams in. And again, I throw out the Denver result defensively because again, the Dolphins were scoring so easily. But and the Patriot game, they stiffened late when they had to. But look, it's been a lot of kind of allowing teams to get into good down and distance situations and not pushing them out of it. And so that is disappointing because as good as this offense is, and I still believe this is a good offense. Obviously, the Armstead injury is concerning. But I feel like we knew that was going to happen again. But they need to be able to at least get a stop or two where it can't be like Tua makes one bad decision and the game is over. And you and I were today at Biscayne Bay Brewhouse, and that's how we felt. Like, once they were not, it was like score, score, score. Okay, oh, shoot. Dolphins screwed up. Oh, now they're behind. And that's it. And now they're not going to be able to catch up. Because you never got the feeling like you even did at times last year where they did it against Baltimore, did it against other teams where they fell behind, but they would get enough stops to be able to give Tua an opportunity at the end of the game. Didn't happen in this game. Really didn't happen in the game against the Chargers. Like you said, Herbert kind of spit the bed there at the end. But I am a little bit concerned. I am, because I don't see the playmakers in the linebacking core. The guys up the middle are not getting pushed. They're getting pushed back, and they're not getting a ton of pass rush. And that's going to leave your corners exposed. And their corner was exposed today.
And that's really the sad thing because so many of us were so high on Kader Kohu, and I'm not ready to just like abandon him to the wolves, so to speak.
No.
I think that he's still a very talented player, but the decision again, this is the decisions you mentioned it. How you worded it is that he doesn't have Vic Fangio does not have a good handle on this team yet. It's very interesting to me, and I got to give credit where it's due. Jason Sarney called it right from the beginning, is that Andrew Van Ginkel was going to be a focal point of this defense. And as much as nobody wants to like look at it and say, oh, well, you have Bradley Chubb, you have Jalen Phillips, where are you going to find room for Andrew Van Ginkel? The only one on this defense, besides maybe Javon Holland himself, who has come to play week in and week out every single time he gets on that field, it's Andrew Van Ginkel. The one guy that it was reported, Vic Fangio took it upon himself to say, you come back to Miami. I have plans for you. And whether those plans came to fruition or not, because I think the initial plan, of course, was to make Van Ginkel play on the inside. Now he's acting as an edge rusher, which is, again, his bread and butter. That's what he's good at. That's what he has said over and over again. This is what I like to do. No matter what, he was the only one that it was able to get to Josh Allen on Sunday. He was the only one. And nobody else even seemed to come close.
That's been in 3 of the games that he's played, actually. And look, I think what we're seeing here is there's high-priced talent and there's high-priced talent that fits a scheme. And this is one of the problems with changing coordinators as much as the Dolphins have over the years, although they needed to make a change after last offseason. And if Vic Fangio is available, you're going to go get him. But it does not appear that certain guys are fitting into this scheme particularly well right now. And then look, Christian Wilkins has made a couple plays, but he has not proved himself to be worth the money that he's looking for so far this season. So, in some ways, some of these decisions are being made for the Dolphins, and some of these guys need to pick up their play if they want to be here long term, whether it's Baker, Wilkins, or any of the others. But you've already paid Bradley Chubb. Like you spent the first round pick to bring Bradley Chubb in. We know how precious first round picks are. He's got to make more plays than this. And has anybody seen Emmanuel Ogba? Because he has not made a play in 2 years. Since he was a really good, he's a bright spot prior to that. So I know Holland. We'd have to look more specifically at what he did today. I know he's been very good through the first 3 games, but their playmakers for the most part are not making a ton of plays, and you can't count on Jalen Ramsey coming back and fixing all this off the knee. I just think that's that's a lot to expect right now, to expect him to do that. So I just think that they're in a tough position right now because it does seem like Fangio is trying to figure it out. Now they're going to get some help. The next 2 teams they're playing are not very good offensively. They're going to be at home. They're going to look better. They may be able to scheme up a game plan that makes it a little bit easier. Keep the defense off the field some, because it did once they fell behind today. You know what I'd like to see McDaniel do? If they win the toss, take the ball. I know it's his whole thing to defer, but it's like you're putting the defense out there, and the defense is not something you can count on right now, and then you kind of fall behind. And even though you had that great scripted drive for Tua, you're still playing from behind. Like I said, then it's like a tennis match where you get broken once, right? Like that's kind of what it felt today. Like once they broke Tua's serve, it was over. Like it was Djokovic on the other side. Like you weren't going to get service back. That's how it felt today. And again, they just need to be better.
I remember once upon a time that the conventional wisdom was to take the ball first. And that's not the case anymore. It's not just a McDaniel thing. Everybody does that. Every single team. I can't think of one team that takes it upon themselves now to say, oh, yeah, we'll definitely take the ball first. Everybody defers to the second half now. It's almost like it's not even worth asking the question anymore. But I think you're right. Honestly, I think setting the tone on offense, going with your best pitch first, I feel like that would be the best thing for the Dolphins. If you can set the tone, score points first, make sure that you get on the board, setting the tone. Because if you're trying to set the tone with your defense, it doesn't look like that's a good idea right now. And this is the thing that was happening during post-game show. And I know that Ron and Eric were telling me, relax, it's not a big deal. Listen, I said it over and over again. I'm not concerned about the season. I think the Dolphins will still make the playoffs one way or another. But that shellacking that they gave us just reminds you, no, the Bills are still the kings of the AFC East. We're not there yet. And I don't like that. I honestly am very upset about that. I was getting my hopes up that maybe, just maybe, the offense would be prolific enough that we would be able to finally beat the Bills. And it's like, no, we're still going to bully you, and we're still going to give you a swirly in the toilet. It's not going to, you're not bigger than us yet. You're faster, but that just means you have to run faster. It didn't work. They couldn't score enough points. And it's because once it's with every team that falls behind, right? Once you start having to force your way into pressing, make bigger plays in order to try to make up for lost time, the Dolphins started making mistakes. Tua started making mistakes. That was actually the weakness that Drew Gear of the Rock Power Report, who went on with me on Fins Nation for Friday, was saying. It's like, if you can get Josh Allen to start feeling like he has to play hero ball, that's when he's going to start making mistakes. But he never had to play hero ball. The whole team was firing on full cylinder the entire time. So there was no opportunity for the Dolphins to ease into a rhythm. They were constantly playing on their heels, both on offense and on defense. And once the pass rush started getting to them, that was it. It was game over. Tua got sacked, 4 times in one game, when he hadn't gotten sacked but once in 3 games. And that was with Kendall Lamb playing left tackle for the first 2 games. So all of a sudden, now you're looking at this Dolphins offense and saying, okay, yeah, you're great. You guys are great. You're undoubtedly great. Nobody can take that away from you. But you got to be perfect or you're not going to win. And that's a lot of pressure to put on an offense. The defense has to get itself figured out.
Yeah, I mean, when we go back to training camp, the defense was ahead of the offense. I mean, that was a lot of the conversation, that the defense was ahead of the offense. And, that has flipped here. So I think that there's some individual players on that defense, and maybe there is a leadership void right now, and maybe some of the younger players need to take more of that leadership. And you'll never know how contract situations are affecting a locker room. That is one of those things that it seeps in there. Wilkins has not been an impact player through the first 4 games. He made a couple plays, but he's not been an impact player through the first 4 games that he was for most of last season. That's a bit of a concern. And again, you can't be counting on Jalen Ramsey to save you right now. You don't know how he's going to react once he comes back with a knee injury, especially if they speed up the process in any way. I don't think they will. It seems like he was ahead of schedule anyway, but that becomes a bit of a concern. But I again, look, when you look at the Bills, they are, I think, overall a better roster than Miami's. Okay, um, but they're beatable. I mean, Miami went up there last year with Skylar Thompson and nearly beat them.
I know that's
Okay,
what was giving me hope.
right, but I think again they made Allen at least uncomfortable in that game. He made plays, but he wasn't perfect. He made mistakes, which kept Miami in the game, even though they had a lot of imperfections on their own offense, whether it was Thompson or whether it was Waddle drops, and they didn't really have a running game and all the rest of that. Today they had a bit of a running game when they went to it. I don't think that the season is off kilter. I think we need to reset the expectation for the defense right now. And I think that at this point, you just want this to be a top half of the league defense. Just get us there. And then we can see where we can go and start creating some turnovers and some confidence. I don't see a defense that is played with an edge so far. They don't play aggressively. They seem to be on their heels a little bit. We heard so much about how Fangio's schemes were going to confuse opponents. Not really seeing that. Again, the Denver game was such an anomaly because of the way it was going on the other side of the ball. It's hard to say. The Patriots was kind of a grinded out game. They figured out a way to win it. They made some plays when they had to make plays. But we know the Patriots are not a good offense. Look at what happened to them today, okay, in Dallas. So I think, like you said, they've faced 2 good offenses so far, and both offenses have scored pretty much every time they've had the ball. And so, I think they need to look at themselves. And I thought what Tua said today was important, which is he came out and said, a lot of us needed this. And, usually he will pin it all on himself, but I think that was more of a collective thing. He's including himself. He's not excluding himself from that. But I think that there was some overconfidence, some cockiness that seeped into that place over the past week. It's hard not to when you win 70-20. Um, but that's why I asked McDaniel about the defense. Because the defense, even against Denver, was okay. It wasn't great. And that's an awful Denver team. And so you knew that they were going to face more of a challenge this week, but you hoped they would be up to it, and they were not.
So now they're going to go. They're going to go back home. They're going to face against the Giants. They're going to face the Panthers. Neither of those teams are good. And once again, this is
Yeah.
why I say I don't see the season as being in jeopardy. I feel like, again, just like with the Broncos, when the Dolphins face a bad team, I fully expect them to give them a shellacking. The other way, it goes the
Right.
other way around. So that's what good teams who are trying to compete for a Super Bowl do. If the Dolphins beat the Giants, if the Dolphins beat the Panthers, then I will say confidently, okay, good. We have a good team. But once again, I'm seeing some very disturbing patterns, specifically when it comes to defense. And if you want to win a Super Bowl, both units have to be on point. I cannot think of a single team that was even if they had the best offense in football, if they have a bottom feeder defense, they don't win the Super Bowl. I don't think that has ever happened, ever. So
No, and this was not supposed to be a bottom feeder defense. I mean, they're not being paid like a bottom feeder defense. I'll just say this. I think that the Dolphins do get right in the next 2 weeks. But sort of my closing point here is I think you're correct in what you're saying, that it doesn't really matter until they see Buffalo again. So this to me is okay. Now you know where your level is, right? You know you're not even been good enough defensively through the first 4 weeks. You went against your primary rival in the conference, along with the Chiefs, but the one in your division, and they handed it to you. They made it look easy, right? So now the question is, between now and that last game of the season, when you see them here, where are you going to be? Are you going to be in position where the game matters? And then if the game matters, are you going to be able to close the deal at home? Because you're not going to have the benefit of the weather, right? It's going to be in the 60s, probably 70s. Buffalo's going to be very comfortable in that. So you're going to have to get it done with where you have progressed from here until then. We've seen some Dolphin defenses progress over the course of a year, particularly with a new coordinator. I will just say that I am not wowed or overwhelmed by what I've seen so far. And I think some of it is coaching. And some of it is there are some highly paid guys on that defense that if they want to be here long term or they want to get their contracts extended in the way that they want, make a damn play and get off the field, because that did not happen today. And again, it can't be a tennis match where one break and that's it. You you have to break serve occasionally. The Dolphins did not break serve at all today, and that again, then you have a Mostert fumble, you have a Tua bad decision, and the game is over. And that's how it felt. It just never felt like they were going to get a stop. And it also seemed like McDaniel was chasing points. He talked about not chasing points at the end of the game. The previous game when they were up 70-20, he felt like he was chasing points going for that 2-point conversion because he did not trust his defense. And again, even so, that mathematically still doesn't make sense to me. But it seemed out of desperation. So season's not lost. They're 3-1 through 4. I think if you looked at the schedule, you would have taken it. And the offense certainly has made great progress. Armstead injury is concerning, but you kind of expected that. And now you're at a stage where, okay, get Ramsey healthy, get Fangio with his group. Some guys need to start making some plays.
Yep. The defense needs I hope you're right. I hope the defense gets itself back in order, because if they don't, it's going to be very difficult for the Dolphins to get past the wild card round, if that's ultimately where it ends up going. Because I was still hoping they win the division. I'm not so sure about that anymore, but we'll see what happens. All right, Ethan, thank you for joining me. I appreciate you coming on with Fins Nation. Everybody, make sure that you go on to PrizePicks.com. Use that promo code 5. That's FIVE, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. Because even if the Dolphins don't beat the Bills every once in a while, well, at least you can still get your wins on PrizePicks. So
play that Tua 6.5 out of the first 10. It's hit 4 straight weeks.
This is Tua's always going to make his completion, so that's an easy prop to win. Go for it.
Always makes his completions. Thanks, Lewis.
All right, thank you, Ethan. Have a good day, everybody.